In the most recent chapters of Jujutsu Kaisen, the stakes are higher than they've ever been, with Gojo Satoru being dead, and the final two villains being able to basically do what they want for free. In this video, I kind of wanted to go over the likelihood of the villains actually winning, since it doesn't seem like the heroes have many chances of beating them. But I also have a guest with me today, which is Kyle Breeze. If you want to say hello, go ahead.
Hey, it's Kyle Breeze, the biggest Yuta hater.
Yeah, you guys kind of mid. But in this video, we're basically going to be going over how the heroes can win if they can, and if they don't, how it would basically play out, and if Gege Alakatami would be going for a more sad ending, basically. If you enjoy this type of content, make sure to like the video and subscribe to my channel, since it'll tell me to make more JJK content in the future, and also, of course, go subscribe to Kaio. So in the most recent chapters, we've had Kari go out and Kashimo go out, and after Kashimo's loss, basically, it seems like he's died. It seems like not a lot of people can match up, since, Hikari and Kashimo are these people that are supposed to be on a different level, along with, maybe Yuta. In my opinion, I do think Yuta is weaker than both of them, but it just seems like with basically their strongest asset or second strongest asset, whichever way you want to think about it, it seems like Sukuna is basically let rampant, basically, like to do anything he wants to. Now we have Higuruma and Yuji going after him, but it's like, what can they do, honestly? I talked about this a little bit in my last video, where I went over how they can possibly win. I basically went over how Higuruma's domain works and how if he catches him in it, it might work for him, but honestly, I don't know if it would do anything to Sukuna if he can use his own domain. What do you think about that?
See, the issue is that there's actually many win cons for Sukuna, even if they actually take away his curse technique. So the first big win con is it's possible that it actually does depend on the wording that Higuruma uses. Now, in the Viz, it does say that Higuruma specifically takes the ability to use your curse techniques, but we've seen that even Higuruma sometimes isn't too sure the in and out of his domain expansion sure hit. So when Yuji actually loses his curse energy control, he wasn't expecting that. It seems like it was actually the first time he saw it, and he's surprised because he says usually it should take your curse technique away. So because it took your curse energy away, I'm assuming it actually switched out the conditions for the sure hit. Now it could be that even Higuruma isn't too sure what's going on, right? He just assumes it'll actually take away the ability to use curse techniques, but it could be that rather specifically it'll take away the ability to use the specific curse technique that's activated in your brain right now, right, in the black box part that everyone has inside of their brains. If that's the case, it's possible that maybe Sukuna might pull out his shrine, be able to switch out the curse techniques, pull something else out even after that. But even if that theory isn't true, because it's pretty headcanon-y, remember that Sukuna was actually in Yuji's body at the time, the weakness that you can actually demand a retrial. So because he knows you can demand a retrial, yeah, if he demands a retrial, who knows where it could go from there.
Yeah, honestly, I think that even if he were to lose his curse technique or his curse energy, not only does he also have 4 arms, he also has, 4 eyes, so he has more perception than them. And, unless Yuji got a power up, which is possible, since we see that Choso says, like, it's okay that you did something to my brothers or whatever. There's theories that he ate his brothers and got new techniques, and with the claws in the recent chapters, he could have gotten some power up, but I don't know if it would put him above Sukuna just because of his, like, pure physical prowess. We see that he's super muscular, and he just seems to have been fighting for, years on end and beating everyone he came across. So even if they did take away his curse technique or curse energy with Higuruma's domain, I don't know what it would really do with him.
The best option I can see is maybe Yuji actually has some resistances to the reinforcement of Sukuna's punches, specifically because he's made up of his own cursed energy, and like we saw in the Gojo fight, when Gojo was actually hit by his fellow purple, he didn't take as much damage because the attack of the curse technique did contain the cursed energy of the person that actually made the attack. So in this case, maybe it's possible the punches would be weaker against Sukuna, but I really agree with Outlaw. Even if you nerf Sukuna so much, you take away his curse technique, you give Yuji some resistance, Sukuna is just so powerful, he probably just beat the absolute crap out of Yuji anyway.
So there is like possibility that they would, take away his curse technique, but we don't really see them winning at all. Unless maybe, the only way I could see it is if maybe Hikari comes in after he beats Urame, which is questionable within itself, but if it does happen, then they have a major chance, I guess you could say, because Hikari is much stronger than both of them. But Sukuna still should be able to catch a W on him, honestly. But with that out of the way, if Sukuna does end up winning against all the Jujutsu High players, Kenjaku is basically free to do whatever he wants, right? He can do whatever he wants with Tengen, the strongest barriers he has, and he can basically create the merger whenever he feels like it. Because I don't think their interests technically align.
Yeah, it's one of those things where even though Kenjaku does need to kill all the players beside himself and Sukuna to end the Culling game, it's Kenjaku. He can probably create some glitches or whatever with the Kogane because he does have Tengen to prematurely end the merger. I'm sure he's got some aces up his sleeve. Though of course he can't just use Tengen to remove the barriers, and there is a dilemma where he needs the barriers to actually create the merger ritual. But the way I'm actually seeing it going between Sukuna and Kenjaku is one of them is going to betray the other one. There's no way that they're both going to stay on the same side for this long. I mean, the only reason Sukuna was actually still tied to Kenjaku is because of the binding vow they made, right? It's actually why Kenjaku had Sukuna on such a tight leash and had him like an attack dog or something when Gojo went to attack him all the way at the beginning. But the wording that Kenjaku specifically used was, you can't fight him until you fulfill your promise, which is the binding vow. And that promise must have been fulfilled over the past month because now Sukuna was allowed to actually fight Gojo.
One of the only ways I see them beating Kenjaku is if Yuta and Maki go to fight him. As we know in the most recent chapters, Yuta and Maki are basically nowhere to be found. Even though Yuta wanted to go fight when Sukuna had both of the Shikigamis fight Gojo, he was still nowhere to be found after Gojo died. So it's like, where's he been basically? And I talked about this a little bit in my last video as well, where I think that Yuta and Maki might just go and fight Kenjaku. And I do believe that they might be able to win, just because Kenjaku is pretty ignorant on Yuta's strength. He says before that he thinks that Yuta still has Rika's soul, when that's not true, and he says that he can't become the next Gojo. I don't know if that's true, it's definitely possible, but I think that Yuta is kind of like a direct counter to Kenjaku, where he can take away his cursed spirits because he has positive energy that he can output. And then Maki also has a soul split katana. So it's really like a contentious fight. I don't know who I think would personally win.
The way I see the fight going is, I actually think Yuta wouldn't be able to be at first, even with everyone's help, but I think that Yuta, whatever power up he's gone, if he has gone a power up, or however much stronger he's gone over the past month, I think that, and of course along with his allies when they all jump Kenjaku and it's jump Kaisen once again, I do think that it's going to put Kenjaku on death's door. And pretty much the theory that I have, very unpopular theory, but I think he's actually going to take Yuta's body with his domain expansion, body swap sure hit right with his open domain, specifically because he does have Tengen to actually break down barriers of Yuta's as well. But of course, because if he is on death's door, he would need to take a body, and there's no better body than Yuta, especially if he's gotten much stronger than his own expectations, right? How strong he thought Yuta was, and on top of that, it's not like he would lose Curse Spirit Manipulation, since we actually saw from when he went from Kairi Itadori's body all the way to Geto's body, he kept Kairi Itadori's curse technique. So it's possible that he might actually lose Kairi Itadori's anti-gravity, but he would actually keep the curse spirit manipulation even if he went into Yuta, so he would still have Tengen, and even then he might even keep the anti-gravity. Rather than removing the anti-gravity, he can actually just put it inside of Yuta, inside of Rika, because he has Rika now, and Rika can actually store the curse techniques for him. And it's also possible the 5-minute binding vow time limit also would cease to exist, since that binding vow is made specifically between Yuta and Rika, and because it's Kenjaku in his body now, there's no longer that binding vow. That's the theory I'm going for that. I know it's very unlikely, but you know, I do want to see Yuta get packed, and it'd be really cool to see.
I mean, as a fellow Yuta hater, I definitely agree that it's an interesting theory. And it does make sense how, like, Yuta is kind of like the best body for Kenjaku to take right now, aside from Gojo, since we don't know if Gojo's dead or not, or whether his body was crushed or whatever. The only thing from stopping me from really saying that the villains would just outright win is what Gege says in this interview, where he says that either one of the main cast will die and the rest will live, or everyone will die but only one will live. And in my opinion, it's really going the way that one will live and everyone else will die, because as we know, Nobara is seemingly killed by Mahito, Gojo was killed in the recent chapters by Sukuna, and Megami has seemingly been put out of commission at least because he got hit with 5 unlimited void attacks. So it seems like everyone is going to be put out of commission or dead but Yuji. And it makes sense because I was talking to Kaio about this before. There's a theory that Yuji's grandfather actually put a curse on him before he died that would force him to live. In the first chapter of the manga, whenever his grandfather is about to die, he tells Yuji he's strong so he should help people. And it doesn't have to be all the time, just whenever he can. And he may feel lost, but don't expect gratitude, just help them. When it's your time to go, make sure you're surrounded by others. Don't end up like me. This is actually pretty contradictory to my theory, which is that everyone would die and Yuji would live, since it does say he's supposed to be surrounded by others and not die alone. But I don't really know. Gege is pretty unpredictable with these type of things, and I think that he could go basically whatever direction he wants to.
Yeah, the way I see it going is either all of them live and they're very powerful, right? We've got 2 or 3 honored ones, or at least combatants that strong, and it fulfills Gojo's dream where the next generation, they've all surpassed him or they've surpassed special grade, and there's a ton of strong combatants and none of them have to be lonely. So it'd be very fulfilling there where Gojo lost the fight, but he wins the battle overall and his dreams come true. But it really could be possible where they all just die. It is a pretty dark story. We've seen a lot of people die in a very unshonen fashion, so Gege definitely doesn't shy away from that type of thing. And just knowing Gege, right, the type of mangaka that he is, and he even wants to make a dark idol manga apparently after JJK, and he does actually like the horror aspects of manga. I could definitely see an ending where a lot of the main cast die, especially, let's say Yuji, Megumi, and Gojo all dead, and maybe nobody lives, I guess, or maybe only Megumi lives, or only Yuji lives. I definitely see that being the case. If all three of them live, again, it's very unlikely, and I would be very shocked if they all live, and I hope they do, right? I really like all three of them, but very likely. But most likely, it's just going to be one of them. I agree with that.
There's basically no plot armor in JJK, right? Anyone is susceptible to death at any time, which is what makes it such a high-stakes manga. We all thought that Gojo was going to win against Sukuna, because literally, when he hit the Black Flashes or whatever, got his RCT output back to the highest extent, basically. It was like, okay, he has RCT, Maharaga's gone, and Sukuna's RCT is still super low. Gojo wins this. The next chapter, we don't even see the final attack. The next chapter, he is dead. Like, it's literally just starts with a flashback, and no one expected it at all. So, you know, anyone can die at any time, basically, is what we're trying to get at, and Gege does not shy away from these aspects of the manga.
And the thing is, if Yuji and Megumi do survive, it'd be pretty fitting since, again, we need an honored one, or at least the strongest person after the series. It could be Yuta, but you know how I see it, right? I think Yuta's gonna get packed, and more than likely, I know a lot of people want to see Yuji be the case where Yuji be the one where he's actually the strongest at the end of the series, right? I also believe it's a very likely possibility that this could happen, but more likely than not, it's going to be Megumi if he's alive. I do think he's alive. I think there's a lot of evidence for it, especially considering the fact that his soul is still inside of Sukuna's body, so if just somehow he can fight back, or you can remove Sukuna's soul from it, or if Megumi can actually take control, maybe the body would go back to how it was before, so he'd get his original body. But even if that's not the case, it'd be really funny to see Megumi with 4 arms or something like that in the series, right? He's got his body back. But still, I do think at least one of them has to have a role at the end of the series. One of them has to be around to continue that legacy, and also to foster the next generation, to make sure, let's say, all the corruption doesn't happen again, because if not, then Gojo's dream would just be dead, and there'd just be corruption taking over again at Jujutsu High.
That's one of the things that's interesting about Gege saying that everyone would die and one would live, is that if one lives, like, what's gonna, like, are the villains dead? Do the villains let him live? Like, it doesn't really make sense, because it's not in character for Kenjaku to let someone like a loose end live. It's not in character for Sukuna to let a loose end live. So it's like, why would one be living? Have the villains been defeated? It's pretty interesting to think about. So if you think about it that way, then it would make sense that someone stays behind and then fosters the next generation of Jujutsu. And it would be most likely to be Yuta, I would say, even though I don't like him all that much. It would be most likely to be him, because that's who Gojo banks on, and that's who Gojo thinks that would be the next him, basically. Even though Kenjaku doesn't see the hype, I do think that Yuta is the best candidate for now. Due to his versatility as a Jutsu sorcerer, with him having multiple curse techniques, being able to output positive energy, and a domain expansion, it's pretty interesting to see his power in full display. So to go into the merger with Kenjaku and Sukuna, I think that it's pretty interesting to see how it would happen, since I don't know if like Sukuna will want to fight the merger, and if that would be the last battle, it would be pretty interesting. But we don't know how strong the merger would be, but it would be definitely very dangerous. And I do believe that if the merger does come to fruition, it would make the most sense for Sukuna to fight it. And then, you know, if it wins, of course, Kenjaku wins the whole series. The series is over and Kenjaku is the winner of the final battle. Kairo has a different theory of mine. I'll let him go into his.
Now, it's not necessarily that I want this to happen, but it's just something that I could see happening because of the unpredictable nature of JJK, right? And even though I say it's unpredictable, a lot of people do think that this could happen, but at the very least, it could just set up Kenjaku as the biggest and final villain and really just boost the hype for him. And what I think may happen is that Kenjaku might backstab Sukuna just like how Zetsu backstabbed Madara, but of course it would make more sense since Kenjaku has actually been set up from the very beginning, right? Since one of the very first few chapters of JJK, so at least it wouldn't be bad writing that he's going to be the final villain. But it's possible that he may actually absorb Sukuna by taking his body or his soul and placing it into the merger, or perhaps he actually might use Sukuna as a vessel for the merger, since sure the merger can be created, but I think it would just be too much power to just have out loose, right? Where maybe it couldn't actually sustain itself and it would just collapse. So Kenjaku would see that and think, oh, maybe it actually needs a vessel to contain all of that power. My main theory is that it's going to be Yuji, right? Where he's going to use Yuji, who's been said to be the perfect vessel and is also a cursed object, and put the merger inside of him. But it's possible that he might be gunning for Sukuna, where Sukuna truly has the ultimate body, right? He is the perfect Jujutsu sorcerer, pretty much a god. If he actually places the merger inside of him and he can somehow control Sukuna or just somehow backstab him, because it is Kenjaku. I mean, with prep, this guy took out Gojo. Granted, he was in a ceiling, but he still did it. That is very impressive. So, at the very least, I don't think that's an impossible outcome.
One of the things I found interesting about what you said is about Yuji's body and Sukuna's body and being a vessel. One thing I found interesting is that at the beginning of the manga, Gojo actually says that a person with outstanding talent like this hasn't been born in 1,000 years, which could be a reference to Sukuna actually, saying that Yuji's physical body has potential to be on that level. So it would make sense for either of them to be the vessels since they do seem to have the best physical bodies in the whole series. One of the most interesting things about this topic that we think is how the villains would interact if they were to win. So we try to answer this question in the video, of course, but it's still like there's still infinite ways it could go. Gege is such an intricate writer, he doesn't leave anything out, so that's why we try to make this video clear and concise and give our theories about how it would end. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, of course, leave a like and subscribe to my channel, and also comment down below what you think of the video and what you think would happen at the end of the manga. Also, of course, go subscribe to Kyle Breeze. Do you have anything else you want to say?
No, it's just Yuta is gonna get packed, and be ready for that, guys.
All right, see you guys later.